Welcome to this discussion about languages. Languages are crucial for us as human beings. Not only it is a tool to think and create, to cooperate and to make great things together, but it's also a part of our cultural heritage and a bridge between past, present and future. One thing we know about languages, of all living languages, is that they are changing. And actually we have changed the title of this discussion, don't worry, it's for the better, by adding one language, because we have some extra guests here. So the name is Small Languages, Big Opportunities, Latgalian, Sami, Nynorsk and Valodu language. My name is Snorre Karkonen Svensson. I'm from House of Languages, Valodu in Latvia, and we deal with languages in different ways, teaching them and publishing books, and we have a small language museum, and we also are language activists. We want to create positive change in society through language and through language-related questions. And Latgalian has always had a special place in our hearts, and with our connection to the Nordics, we are also now in these days finalizing an exhibition, digital exhibition on Latgalian and Nynorsk with EEA grant, Norway grant, about the users and activists for these two languages. But now we are speaking about lesser used languages in the Nordic region. And I'm very happy to have these four specialists here representing the Baltic area. And also to bring them together because they meet for the first time also. So we have Katri Ugur, or Uguri Katri. You have a background as journalist and also lecturer at Tartu University. And now you work in Valodu Institute, and where you work on language and education. And because Valodu language, similar to Latgalian, has been neglected for many years, and it needs to get its place in education. Then we have Rainer Kuba. You are the director of Valodu Institute, where I worked since 2010, and you have a background in landscape ecology. And you have told a story that is, I think that many Latgalians would recognize growing up in Soviet time and even after, namely speaking one language at home, and when you come to school, then you are meeting another language. Then we have Sanita Martin. You are professor at Rezekne Academy of Technology. You worked a lot with both Latvian and Latgalian language and education, and you also are involved in Latgalian language technologies and something very intriguing, linguistic landscapes. And then we have Tone Slenes. You are working at Norwegian Museum of Written Culture, which actually consists of three museums connected to Nynorsk, the lesser used written language in Norway. And you have a very global background from Norwegian Aid Organization and Norwegian Foreign Service. So you have worked the most globally of all of us. So welcome everybody. Let's give them an applause. Yeah. So when we speak about the Nordic and Baltics, at first glance, well, 5 + 3 countries, well, then we have like these, should be 8 languages, right? Icelandic in Iceland, Danish in Denmark, Norwegian in Norway, Swedish in Sweden, Finnish in Finland, Estonian in Estonia, Latvian in Latvia, and Lithuanian in Lithuania. But knowing that there are more than 7,000 languages in the world and only 200 countries, then, and also knowing that the history of most countries are quite complicated and that we people are migrating, then of course there are very few places where the linguistic situation is that simple. In the Nordic area we have 3 autonomous areas, the Faroe Islands, Greenland and the Åland Islands, and they have a different language than their main countries. So Faroese, Greenlandic and Swedish in Åland. And in Norway, Sweden and Finland, there are small and even smaller Sami languages, Finno-Ugric languages. In Latvia we have Livonian. There is a German-speaking community south in Denmark. There are sign languages. In northern part of Norway and Sweden, we have a version of Finnish language called kvensk in Kveni in Norway, meänkieli in Finland. There are different varieties of Roma language. We have Yiddish, Karaim in Lithuania. And in Estonia, there's Seto and Võru language. And in both Norway and Latvia, there are 2 standardized written language traditions, Bokmål and Nynorsk in Norway, and Standard Latvian and Standard Latgalian in Latvia. And of course, there are also all kinds of communities connected to migration in past times and in not recent history, not to mention all the dialects. So we are living here in the Nordic and Baltics in a very rich, linguistically rich area. Very recently, in the 2nd of May, languages strengthened their position and importance in the Nordic region as the ministers of culture and education of the Nordic countries signed a new declaration on Nordic language policy, taking into consideration challenges as digitalization and globalization. Now I want to cite Sweden's Minister of Culture, Parisa Liljestrand. As a Nordic community, we want to preserve, use and develop all our languages. After all, access to language is a matter of freedom, democracy and equality. And you heard it's all our languages. So it's not only the major languages, but also the lesser used one. And we are speaking about the lesser used languages in the Nordics and Baltics here today. And we are in Tsesis, not far from southern part of Estonia. But I'm not sure everybody have heard about Võru language here. In Latvia, we know an Estonian poet called Kontra, who writes in Võru. He's famous, but this language, that's one of his language he writes in, is not that known. And although it's just about across the border here. So my first question is to Katri and Rainer, what is Võru language?
Good afternoon. Võru language is a very old Finnic language, and actually it's interesting that the language itself is more than 10 times older than the town by what the language is named. Võru town is more than 200 years old, but Võru language, the South Estonian language, is more than 2,000 years old. That's what linguistic historian described. And historically, in also half of Latvia was South Estonian area, and even today in your small town Ape, in our language it's Hopa. A lot of locals can understand Võru language in there. And Estonian and Võro are quite different. We have special dictionary, Estonian and Võru language, and as you can see, this dictionary isn't small book, it's quite big book. And even we have this kind of funny cases. Do you know what false friends are in linguistic? It means the words what means different things in different languages, and we even printed dictionary of Võru Estonian false friends, same words with different meanings, and it's also a lot of pages and a lot of words. So when some North Estonians think that they can understand Võru language because words are similar to Estonian, very often they misunderstand because same words means in Võru language different things, and there are a lot of funny cases. And during Soviet time, Võru language was almost prohibited, and children in school were punished when they used Võru language. But still, this language is alive still, and we are quite happy about that. But based on Estonian legislation, there is no Võru language in Estonia. Officially, it's Võru dialect of Estonian language. But we, Võru people, we think that this is wrong, and we still call it language because for us it's language. And Võru people are bilingual, we can speak in both languages. North Estonians usually do not understand Võru people. And latest census in Estonia showed that there are more than 86,000 Võru speakers in Estonia.
Yes, but basically you cannot see them so often. So it's still a very stigmatized language. And I have a little personal project. I try to wash out secret Võru people, Võru speakers. And for now, my score is about one person per day. So passive knowledge of language is there. Even children understand Võru language, even if they haven't learned it at school or home language is Estonian. They do understand, but there is a big barrier of speaking. And this means that although I am responsible for teaching Võru language at schools as much it is now possible, I think that more important is that this language regains its use in everyday situations, so that we could bring this passive language knowledge somehow into our ears. So the language must be heard. Why I do this? Because I often answer even phone calls from strangers in Võru, and what I get often is, oh, this language sounds so fun. It's lots of fun. It's a language of good spirit, good emotions. And I think if we are speaking about big challenges or big possibilities of small languages, that's it. We get our identity, we identify ourselves with language, with a land, and with each other. So it combines. One big thing about Võru language is that we use a lot of the sign own. we often say not Vuru language, but own language. And this own sign is very strong sign for me about how deep the knowledge and need for a language there actually is. So I think that although we legally do not exist, we still do exist.
Yes, and in this festival there is also focus on another Finno-Ugric language with several events. It's Livonian, spoken here in Latvia, but also Norway, Sweden and Finland. And Russia have Finno-Ugric language, or several Finno-Ugric languages, namely the Sami languages. And I have a question for you, Tone. Here in the Baltic states, we think about the Nordic countries as considered like democratic states, very inclusive, and very places, some of the places in the world where it's best to live, whoever you are. And you also heard that in the declaration, the Nordic declaration, language declaration I mentioned. But it hasn't always been like that. Could you share some background of the darker side of history and how it has changed to now regarding the Sami languages? There are several Sami languages. Some of them are bigger, some are smaller. And they are spoken in different parts of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia, the Kola Peninsula.
Yes, thank you. In Norway, I think 6 of the Sami languages are spoken, of the 10 Sami languages that exist. And during the 20th century, there was a lot of Norwegian or like there was a process where you couldn't use Sami languages in school, and people weren't allowed, and they were punished and stigmatized for using the Sami languages from home. And in that period of time, a lot of people, of course, lost the language and forgot the language. But in the recent years, there's been a lot of restoration of that process, and now only 2 years back, in 2022, we got a new language law that gave the official status to 3 of the Sami languages, the South Sami, the Lule Sami, and the North Sami. And I think only 500 people speak South Sami, and there's very few, 500 maybe Lule Sami, and then 25,000 North Sami, as far as I've recalled.
So when you think about Latvian as a small language compared to this.
But what is really important with the language law is that it gives official status, and then the judicial side is a good base. But of course, then it needs to be used. And now the pupils can learn again in school and have the right to learn their Sami language in school. And in the municipalities where they have official Sami language, case handling, then you will also will be entitled to learning a lot of the other subjects that you will learn in school in your Sami language. So this is a very important step. And of course, it needs to be follow up with the official information from the websites of the governmental institutions, the ministries. Everybody should offer now information in the Sami languages, and that is a very important step. But also we need to have it in literature, in museums, in cultural events, in festivals. You have to see your language in all areas of society. And for instance, now there are projects translating the Bible into the Sami languages. A lot of important steps to actually to see your full language in all sides of society. So I think that was
Yeah, and we see that, like, what changed, how this situation could change to the better. It was connected by activism. For this was in the 70s where you had this change in society where was a lot of activism connected to environment, to emancipation, to peace, and also to languages, for Sami language and for Nynorsk. And also there was also Sami language was also connected to environmental issues, because there were great protests to build a power plant in northern Norway, in the areas of Sami people, and this raised the awareness for Sami people in Norway. And yes, so there are several Sami languages, and Sanita, you have actually cooperated in a project connected with one of those smaller Sami languages, namely South Sami languages. So what's the connection between Latgalian and South Sami, or how do you cooperate?
Labadina. At first I would like to stress, listening to my neighbors, I can say that linguistically they are so diverse languages. Latgalian as Latvian, they are both Baltic languages, and here Finno-Ugric. But social-linguistically, there are so many similarities. Like you said, 500 speakers, South Sami. Latgalians would be something like 158,000 speakers around. And similarities to you, you said Viru is stigmatized. I wouldn't say that Latgalian is stigmatized, but I would say it is not normalized. It's not part of norm to hear that Latgalian is taught at school. It's not part of norm that we can see in linguistic landscape. Even we see bilingual signs now in the region, Latvian and Latgalian. Sorry, Snorre, now back to your question. We decided to look at Latgalian and teach our new generation not only about Latgalian, but they can understand what does it mean, regional identity, regional language, multilingual awareness, in comparison with other 3 different countries. We took South Sami in Norway, we took Mirandese in Portugal. We didn't take you. We have had so much cooperated with Viru. We decided now it's time, and we took from the Netherlands, it is West Frisian language. So we created e-book, All Plus, you can Google and find. It is with open access, with 5 chapters. Every language, Latgalian, West Frisian, South Sami, Mirandese, has its own chapter, plus 5th chapter, and it's called ownership and leadership. What does it mean? It means if you want to save language, not just save, but develop and bring to next generations, you have to take some kind of leadership. You have to have this feeling of ownership. It's not only land. Land is connected with culture, language, and future. And here you asked, mazas valodas lielas iespējas, big opportunities. And in Latvian discourse, not Latgalian, but in Latvian, we have looked at smaller languages from the perspective language as a problem. But language can't be a problem. Language has opportunities, language has a right, and language has a value. This is our approach with this book.
Yeah, thank you. That's very, very well put. We already mentioned the role democracy has for lesser used languages. We have had a project together with Tone's organization about Latgalian and Nynorsk in Norway, and what we see that there are so many similarities in the situation with having 2 written languages, one lesser used, connected to one region, and many things are very similar. But what is different is how the development has been connected to history and democracy, or the lack of democracy. Like Latgalian has had several setbacks that Nynorsk didn't have. First with the printing prohibition in the mid-1860s. Then there was this flourishing time in the beginning of 20th century where Latgalian was used also in official documents in school and had a quite good position compared to other parts of history. And then we had in 1934 the Ulmanis regime began. That was the second setback, and then the third one with the Soviet time. So, but now Latvia has been independent and democracy for 30 years. And Sanita, how would you say the position of Latgalian language is today compared to 10 or 20 years ago?
It's short question, but it would be a big answer along, but I will try to put, it's all the time changing. In comparison, like 10 years ago, I would say it is more present. You can see in bilingual science, in many science. It is part of curricula if parents decide to choose it. It's possible to learn at school. Of course, it's not officially part of program or curricula as it was almost 100 years ago, but I think it's wrong perspective to look and bring from past to present. You have to look from the perspective of current situation. So parents have rights to choose Latgalian, and students have rights to choose and learn. What is missing? I think prestige and status is still missing. Particularly for generations who are like my generation and older, we are from the last century all, yeah? So we have been in situation when Latgalian was not allowed to use, even during the breaks at school. My personal story is when my teacher, Latvian language teacher, heard that I spoke Latgalian with my classmates, and she said, Sanita, do you want 5 to get? This was the highest mark. If you want to get 5, you should stop to speak Latgalian because your Latvian will be disturbed. And for many people, still Latgalian is language of church and home. And to normalize this language, to increase prestige, I think official regional language status is missing. For many people, this would put in another hierarchy. This is mean. For me, not. For me, I think if people are, it's allowed at schools, it's allowed to use in the public space, it's very much of us, individual initiatives. But for many people, this top-down perspective also very, very important. We shouldn't overestimate it. But in general, I would say things are developing. A lot of many people from younger generation are active in producing books, in creating different kind of bilingual editions, trilingual editions, competition, prose readings. And there are many, many activities, but I think what is missing work with parents, that parents are more convinced and they would somehow see value for their children to take it as additional language at school. This is what missing, I would say.
Yeah, and we were comparing to Nynorsk, and where for almost all of Nynorsk existence, Norway has been a democratic country, and already quite early Nynorsk got a place also in legislation and this formal status. But why isn't that enough? Why do you have to still to fight for the rights of the language yeah?
Yeah, you said it because in 1885, that's a long time ago, right? Norway decided that Nynorsk and Bokmål are equal written languages in Norway. So we had the decision, but still we struggle to get all the material, the rights fulfilled through school with regards to the tools you need, the digital tools and everything. So the democracy has been very important, and the activist group, the language activists, have been really good at working steady towards reaching important milestones in realizing all the language rights that we should have with the two equal languages. But yes, even though they are equal, we have like 600,000 Nynorsk users in Norway, of a population of 5.5 million, is it? So we are a lesser used language compared to the Bokmål. We still have to work hard, and we are really dependent on all the users of Nynorsk and all the activist groups and the whole society actually to work towards realizing the rights. And it's important in that regard to see your language in all spheres of society. You need to see it in literature, science, music, festivals. You need to have it on the official broadcasting channels and websites. You need to have it everywhere. And that is not the case in all parts of Norway, although the language is used in the whole of Norway. It's not one geographical area, it's the whole country. And it was also based on how the whole country spoke. It's Ivar Aasen collected the dialects and found a pattern, and so it's also a democratic language. It's based on democratic values, that everybody should be able to use their language close to their heart, close to how they speak, and then engaged in debate. So, yeah, but still working.
Yeah, thank you. There are, as we mentioned several times, there has been activism is important for lesser used language. So my next question is for all of you. So what do you think is the role of non-governmental organization and individuals and initiatives that doesn't come directly from the state, but from the people? And what can be done to engage more people in these activities, and also to get the understanding of the supporting non-users for all of these three languages you are representing? Then in your country, most people are using another language, so how get them also to support our case, that it's nothing that you do in your corner and go away everybody else, but this is actually a shared national value. This lesser used language is a part of the national heritage, and this is a part of what belongs to this country and its people, and not only to the users of this language. So yeah. So what is the role of activism? Katri, you want to start?
Yes, I would. I think the most important thing is to combine certain language with positive emotion, with pleasant emotions. And we have a wonderful example. We had own party, Uma Pito. It was a song festival, as you know, Estonians and Latvians have, and we really did have a great song festival this year, quite recently, in which all the songs were in Valodu language, and very many people wanted to come to this festival. I will give you numbers just in a moment, but I have to say that the choirs that took part mostly learned those languages, or they were instructed in Estonian, although the songs were in Valodu language. So I don't know how many visitors we had, but basically we had more than 4,000 singers from all the age groups. We had massive production and really, really great party, which was organized partly by let's say, non-governmental organizations, or in total. So, do you know how many visitors we had?
As total, more than 7,000 participants was in that song festival. And as I already got the microphone, connection with NGOs during Soviet time, the last part of last century, when Soviet regime started to collapse, one small NGO in South Estonia, which called Võro Selts, started in 1987 and 88, and as a result of its activity, one of its results is Võro Institute, governmental institution, a research and development agency in South Estonia, Võro Institute, where I from, and we are from. And this NGO started with Võro language newspaper, Uma Leht, but unfortunately it's still not daily or even not weekly newspaper. It is printed after 2 weeks, but even this newspaper already is part of state-owned company, and no, we as Võru people, we have a lot of experiences when NGO starts new things connected with small language, and it grows and grows, and it starts live its own life. And I encourage the people to start NGOs and deal with small languages.
About Latgalian, I think NGOs, they play crucial role. Currently, I can say in Latgalian, Valodu and individuals, what they are doing, it's amazing. I can be just jealous. I couldn't do so much as they do. Of course, it is a bit sporadic. It is not well planned in long term. And if they do 1 year, 2, 3, something very interesting and important, but it's not planned like package. From language vitality, positions, theory, it will disappear. Therefore, it's important, we know from language planning, it is with corpus planning, they are planning editions, technologies, language corpora we are planning, but it is important, I mentioned status, but it is important also to plan discourses. If our media people bring in media positive discourses, narratives, messages about multilingualism, well, Latgalian is part of it, and speak about language as an opportunity and value, not as a problem. This is what we are missing. Media can do a lot, starting with young generation and also with older who reads newspapers and digital media, to bring stories. What is message? To bring positive stories. You are from Norway. My last example, I'm doing research at the moment about Latvian diaspora, and one woman from Oslo, she has graduated Riga French lycees, and she has said, of course, after 9th grade, when my classmates came from countryside, it means from Reizekne, Valmiera, Cēsis, this is countryside from Riga perspective. What our teacher did, she tried to do everything with the accent, intonations, change to Latvian standard language. But when I started to live in Norway, she said we are living now 14 years in Norway, how every Norwegian is proud of his or her dialect. And now I started to think about Latvia dialects. Why I didn't look at from such perspective. And this is media in school, what can do a lot about language prestige. And if I think if I could give advice NGOs, go to schools, including parents. They have big agency, particularly for primary schools. But this is one thing, we don't want to give more tasks for NGOs, but it should be, language development should be planned from at least for perspective, for long term.
Yeah, and what you mentioned about this long-term work, I think that for NGOs it's difficult because of financing, because if we have long-term projects, you need to know that you have money next year or in 5 years also to do these things. I also wanted to comment on schools, that it's important to work on the schools in this core area where this language is used, but also in the rest of the country. Like in Latvia, you finish school with reading a book in Latgalian, or even I studied Baltic philology. We, in Latvian, learning Latvian literature, it was like, what is Latgalian literature? Is it Latvian literature? According to the studies, probably no, because we didn't read a single book. And that is quite strange, that it's it's not a part of the shared culture as it should be, and it's a treasure for all of the countries. So it's not only to work in schools in Latgale or Valodu or in western part of Norway, but in all the country.
Absolutely, I would say that children even in Liepāja or Ventspils or Cēsis, they would benefit if they could compare one small story, some funny story for children in Latvian standard and Latgalian, and see that actually when they read, they can understand quite a lot. They are similar languages, and for them, maybe what is different aims for Latgale students and students, let's say in Cēsis. But you don't have to learn to speak Latgalian. Nobody will force. We shouldn't force anyone to learn some language. But to create this language awareness, that this is also part of Latvian identity, because Latvian identity is very diverse. We should put diversity to Latvian identity. Latgalianness is part of Latvian identity, but the aim for students in Latgale would be also to learn to read and write, because this is not so difficult if you start and do it. And for long-term purposes, what you said, I can be jealous at Viru Institute, because in Latvia we don't have any Latgalian institute which is financed long-term by the state. Yes? So you do. Yeah, Viru Institute is financed by the state, and this is absolutely where we could see this puzzle, NGOs, schools and different players, agents, for the same one aim, but it is in Latvia still not planned in the way with long term, including different participants.
Yeah, and I jump in where you left, because in Norway we have had a good development of a whole infrastructure for supporting the lesser used language Nynorsk. And also now the language law says explicitly that you should walk the extra mile to lift the lesser used language. You should not treat the language equally, because one needs extra push and extra support, and you should always do that. And the government, as you said, they should, and in Norway they do, give a lot of funding for museums like us, for theater, for NGOs, for projects in media, for all kinds of tools to see the Nynorsk language used in all kinds of sides of the society. And it is important that all the individuals use their language as much as they can and not stop using it, and also be bold and use it in debates and use it where it's not used before. And also contribute to the growth and the development of the language, because we need to see that the language is used not only preserved like the history and the treasure of our mutual identity, but we need to develop it and use it in new areas and find new ways of expressing the language. And we use it in rap and in all new ways of dealing with the language. And in this project we have together with the NGO that you're heading and our museum, the core of that project is also to heighten to be proud of the language that you use, and also to use it, see that you can use it in every side of society. And it's languages and dialects are really the most important part, or one of the most important indicators of your identity. So of course it's really precious to all the users, and we also need a positive attitude for the non-users to support us in using our dialects and our written language.
We have already mentioned education, so I would. Could you say very short for each of you what is the role of your lesser used languages in the educational system? Because I think that's an area where activists and for different lesser used language can learn a lot from each other, how to give it a larger place in educational system, formal and non-formal education.
I'll start. In Norway, you will learn Nynorsk and Bokmål throughout the whole education system, or all the classes. You will also get exams and master degrees and bachelors, and you will use it in universities. The whole system is in both languages, and one main language and one side language early on, and then you will be able to do everything within both languages. And also on 1st of August, in 1 month, we also have a new law, education law, where the rights of the students is strengthened. And one example of how it's important to push still for this lesser used language, Nynorsk, is that, for instance, a lot of mayors, together with the activist organizations, they pushed Google to offer a translation, or like a spelling program for the Nynorsk pupils. Because they've now, a whole generation have been in school without proper support when writing their own language on their iPads and Chromebooks. They've, for instance, written egg, and then they got a spelling mistake because the program was only in Bokmål, not in Nynorsk. So of course they were super confused. But now Google, after this push from different sites, have said, yeah, we will offer this now, so that that will be a good basis for the kids onwards. Yeah.
In Latvia, in Latgalian, de jure, as I said, it's possible to choose Latgalian, but problem is if there are 2 or 3 families who have decided that their child wants to learn Latgalian, but minimum is 8 students, for instance, or 10, otherwise financially it's not supported by the school. Therefore, it can be a problem for those who want, but they can't get because of amount of students. This is one problem. Even it is possible. It's already a lot, I think, at the moment. The second problem, lack of teachers. In general, Latvia, we know teachers' problems, and with Latgalian. So in our Reizekne Academy of Technologies, we don't have many students, but who decided to study and be teacher of Latvian language and literature. We give them some courses. They can learn Latgalian and Latgalian literature. They can also go to school, and also probably as part of subject Latvian, they can compare and speak also about Latgalian as part of Latvian. But teachers is a problem, and this generational big gap, I would say, how students would like to learn language. Now we are looking differently, and how teachers would like to teach. They are really big gap, and therefore important professional development of teachers. And the last thing, but not less important, they are teaching materials, books. Of course, students in 2024, students like this guy, they don't want to read 19th century texts, heavy with different contexts with which they are not familiar, and therefore modern books, and therefore we also, this I mentioned All Plus project, we developed this chapter, which is not so much used by teachers. This is, you see, it is like complex problem, and you are in your Valodu, you are developing materials. So modern good materials also can't be not too much.
Well, one thing I think Viru Institute has been very successful in is producing teaching materials as a language, let's say language lessons. Viru as language. That's a very, very great thing you have done, because I've worked so little time, not even a year. And another very good thing is that there is considerable language technology. We have the same vocabulary dictionary online, working both ways. We have neurotranslation, which means that you can translate into Viru and from Viru online. And we also have synthesized sound, so synthesized speech. These are very great things schools can use. But I would say, and I would go further, I'm not so much keen about teaching local language as a foreign language, 1 hour per week, let's say, as an elective course. This is not the point we should go. I think we should aim to the situation where language of instruction is
like in Nynorsk in Norway, where it's...
Yeah. So we can teach math and science in Viru language. It has been in history like that, so that books were printed in, let's say, Estonian or Tallinn language, but the instruction was in Viru. This would be a nice goal for me.
Yeah. Great. We are now soon ending our discussion, but maybe there are some questions from the audience. Yes? So there are 2 questions here. We need some help with microphone.
Come here.
Yes, I have one that's sort of related to this. So what makes like a dialect of a language different than the language itself? Like, for example, if there's one language and like a group of people speak it, but like a few words, just few are like spoken separately, it's basically the same language, but they how many words, like how much of the language has to be different for it to be considered like a different dialect?
Sounds like a answer for question for Sanita.
So, thank you for your great question. Thank you. So linguistically, it can be done research like 8% said if it is 8%, 10%, but it's not only about counting words and percentage. It can be very similar, like Latvian and Latgalian. Alexei Andronov, I think, has done it with one text. And it was really few words. I don't remember from 100 words. There were just few which were really different, with old Baltic roots, but like not few Latvian words which have German roots, for instance. I remember. So, but for deciding is it language or dialect, there are also other criteria, you know. So, and other criteria means also self-identification. What I consider is it language or dialect, but it is maybe subjective as well. But another criteria would be about orthography. Does language has its own orthography, writing rules, grammar? And grammar, if we look at grammar, for instance, not only of amount of words, but grammar, Latgalian grammar, you can find, for instance, in this language or dialect, as you wish to say, you can find all the roots of Baltic languages, which is not anymore in Latvian standard, for instance, Latvian and Latgalian. So orthography, written tradition is very important. So literature, if it is written in this literature, you want to...
Very short, Rainer, because there was another question also.
Võru language is quite a good example to describe this difference between dialect and language, because we, Võru people, we say that Võru language is language, and as you can see, the dictionary of Estonian Võru is quite big book, but politically it's decided that there's no Võru language in Estonia, and based on Estonian Language Act, Võru is dialect. And the answer is that there's no strict definition how to describe difference between dialect and language. It's just political decision.
Yeah, like there are three languages, three Scandinavian languages, Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish, but we can understand each other. It's because there are three states. If it was one Scandinavia, one state, probably there will be one language, or three big dialect groups. Yeah.
My name is Elita Tsakula. I am a Latgalian speaker, and I live in Norway, and we're going to have a discussion about the Latvia's eastern border and also other EU countries' eastern border and development of the border regions. What would be your advice to the decision makers when it comes also to the languages that are in these border regions, as for example in Latgala and I suppose also in Võru? Is there any connection between the development, the local development, and the language?
Thank you, Elita. You are from Reizekne, I remember you. How I before said about language, that we can't look in narrow sense just to NGOs, or in this sense I would like to say about education. We can't develop Latgalian or education if we don't look at all region. People are moving, leaving empty territories. So I didn't mention, thank you for this question, economical, political, education, humanities. This is really whole important package. Education, we can't speak about Latgalian if there are no speakers, no people anymore. And we can't speak about Latgalian if we don't do Latgalian things. This is what we can learn from all indigenous people, cultures, about storytelling. If you don't do traditional things anymore, which can be transformed in modern ways, we see Annele Slishan, what she is doing, or other traditional thing. So language is frame. You have to fill frame with content. And if you are still doing in this region things, developing economy, traditional cultures, also in new forms, there will be content for which to use language. But if there are no content, we don't need language anymore. So therefore, it is very important to look at education, particular in Latgal region, from very integrative perspective. And thank you for this question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tone and Sanit and Rainer and Katri for giving us insight. And I think that this will not be the last time, first and last time you meet, because I think that you all have something to learn from each other and get inspired by each other and what you do. And also, I think that all of our languages will live and thrive for many generations to come. But this discussion has come to an end. Thank you so much, and thank you very much for Big thanks to Nordic Council of Ministers office in Latvia for letting us use this stage for this discussion. So thank you, and thank you to the audience for listening.